Alright, so now let's talk about the Node.js driver and updates. So we're going to talk about a few different kinds of updates right now. So first we'll talk about replacement updates, where we actually replace the entire document. We'll talk about InPlace updates, where you can use update operators to actually modify the document without completely replacing it. And then we'll talk about multi-updates, where you can actually apply these in-place updates to a large number of documents using a single operation. So let's get started. Alright, so here's our example of updates using replacement. So all this up here is the same. We connect just like before, and we have our query for an assignment. And here we're doing a find one just to get the first document that has homework 1 as the value of assignment. That's because if we're doing a replacement down here, we need to actually have our original document. So if there's an error, we throw an error. If we don't get anything back, we don't really have anything to work with for our update, so we return an error to the user, close the connection to the database, and return, so that we don't execute this code down here with our null document. So we'll talk about this in a little bit, but coming down here, we actually have db.collection grades, just like before, except now we do .update, we give it our query, and we give it the document that we want to replace the first match for our query with. And then down here we have a callback, we can throw an error, and updated here is the number of documents that we updated, so we just print out a message saying we successfully updated, hopefully this is going to be one document, and then we just close the connection to the database. So up here, this is where we actually are making the modification. So we get our document back, and down here we want to set the date returned. So this is just when we return the assignment to the student. So we set doc date returned equals new date, all just in JavaScript, nothing MongoDB related here. And then down here, when we do the update, we pass document as our replacement. So it's actually going to be the same document we got from the find one, plus the date returned. So I want to talk a little bit about this line here. So notice that we're actually doing two separate queries. So we're doing a query for the find one, and we're doing a query for the update. So we actually may have other people connected to our database. We may have other operations going on besides just the ones you see here. So between these two queries, things might have changed. And notice that there's nothing about find one that says which document that has a value of homework 1 for assignment we're getting back. It could be any student for the document we get back, but all we really are selecting on is the assignment. So we don't actually have any guarantee that the document we get back here is the same document we update here if we just use this query right here. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, underscore ID is unique in the document that we got back. So let's just add that to our query to make sure that the document that we update is exactly the same document that we got back in our find one. This is important because in our query we might have gotten a document with a different student, and then down here when we update we're doing a complete replacement without checking the old field, so we might have actually just updated it and replaced the old student in a document that we didn't intend to replace. Alright, so let's run that. Alright, so we see successfully updated one document. So now let's take a look. So I'm going to do db.grades.find assignment of homework 1. So notice we get all our documents back, and one of them actually has the date returned set to our current date. So that's how to do an update with replacement. But notice that we only really added one field, and we actually replaced this entire document. All the fields happen to be the same, but maybe it's not quite as efficient as we could be. So let's take a look at in-place updates. Alright, so this is an example of an in-place update. And note that it's a little bit simpler just because it matches more what we're trying to do right now. We actually don't need to do a find one, we just go straight to the update. And as our second argument, this operator, instead of a document that we're going to use to replace our original document, we actually have this $set operator here. So what this says is that we actually query for an assignment of homework 1, and for the first one we get back, we actually apply this operator to that document. So the result of this will be that we have our original document with this additional field set. And actually the set operator will set date returned to the current date, regardless of whether it existed in the original document. So we just run the update, we have the callback, and we log a message, just like before. Updated is the number of documents that we updated, so we hope that says 1. So let's run that. Alright, so we see successfully updated 1 document. So let's actually go into the course database again and run db.grades.find assignment homework 1. So we look here and we see that we have a list of documents for homework 1, and now we actually have 2 documents with date returned. So this was the one we updated before, and this is the one we updated using the InPlace update. And notice that in one case we reordered the fields, and in the other case we didn't. So this kind of demonstrates that this is really a different operation. This one we just saved the original document. This one we did an InPlace update, which actually resulted in the fields coming back in a different order. Alright, so one issue with this is that we've only updated 2 fields, and we don't want to have to run an update for every single document that we want to set date returned on. So let's talk about multi-updates. Alright, so this is an example of doing an update on multiple documents. So for this example, I'm actually going to query with no selector, just to select all the documents in our grades collection, and I'm actually just going to use unset on date returned. So maybe I made a mistake and I actually didn't want to set date returned on any of these documents. So this will actually query all the documents and unset date returned. And so what actually makes this a multi-update is this options argument. So the first argument here is a query, second argument is what operation to apply, and the third argument is an option structure that specifies what kind of update it is. So in this case, it's a multi-document update. So just like before, we're actually printing the number of documents that we updated, but we're hoping that we updated more than 1 in this case, because we're actually matching all 16 documents in the grades collection. So let's run that. Alright, so we got successfully updated 16 documents. So let's take a look. Alright, so we look here and we actually see all our documents for homework 1, and notice that none of them have a date returned field. And in fact, 2 of them have had their fields reordered, which shows that MongoDB didn't actually modify these documents because it realized that it was being called with the unset operator, and these documents actually didn't have a date returned field at all, so they didn't need to be modified. Alright, so that was an example of updating by replacing a document, updating in place using update operators, and updating multiple documents. Alright, so here's our quiz. So this is a little code snippet, very similar to the ones that we were looking at in the lectures. And here we have a query and the update operator that we're trying to apply. So the question is, what happens when you run the above code with the given update operator? Does it change assignment to homework 2 and change date graded to the current date? Does it change date graded to the current date ignoring assignment? Does it replace the document with a document with only the date graded and assignment fields? Or does it return an error?